Greetings YouTube and welcome to the blue corner and to a Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile. And as you can tell by the playmat, we are going to be going over none other than Mikanko. It's been, what, over half a year since I last posted a paper profile on the channel, and quite a bit has happened since then, as not only has this deck picked up a fair amount of play over the preceding following months, but it's even topped YCS's, topped many regionals, and it also won a YCS, and it almost made top cut at French Nationals too. So, not bad for a previously sleeper deck, and truth be told, this deck is still good. It's never going to truly go away. It's kind of in the position that Dragon Link sometimes finds itself in, where there'll be formats where a deck like this is just good, and then formats where it's not, as its playstyle preys on certain deck types, like say Kashtira, and like decks that rely on targeting destructive removal to deal with threats, or like just summons big monsters but can't really negate stuff. Again, Kashtira. So when a deck like that, or multiple decks like that, are prominent in a format, Mikanko becomes good. But if you have decks that put up a bunch of negations, or can work with, make their board go away, or just basically don't care about your playstyle, then this deck becomes weaker. And of course, formats where Droll and Lockbird is very popular are also kind of rough, because Droll hurts this deck tremendously. And the format we're going into post-Phantom Nightmare in particular is going to be a hand trap heavy format. So playing the blind second build of the deck, I would not recommend, especially into decks like Fire King and Labyrinth, as the blind second Mikanko deck just does not do well against those matchups. But I won't deny that it's probably one of the more budget-friendly versions of the deck, because you don't need to run a lot of cards in your extra deck, like SP Little Knights and what have you. All you're doing is you're just trying to like slam lava golems and kaijus down and then kill them. Just the thing about that build is, you pretty much want to avoid main decking Lava Golem, because it's a fire monster, and Fire Kings be like, cool, pop it with Kieran and do stuff. And bear in mind too that Fire Kings can non-target destroy back row, which can crack your lock. And what else is there to really say? I think if you're going to play this deck in this format or next format, it has to be going first build. It doesn't have to be Sinful Spoils Mikanko, because not everyone has $800 lying around to spend on wanted posters and what have you. You can play other going first versions. This is one of them. This is the Dogmatika pillar build. You've also got the Assault build with Psy Reflector, E-Teleport. It's more or less a cheaper version of the Sinful Spoils. They both do the same thing, which is try to get the power to a Braver Dragon. Sinful Spoils does it with Excel Dragon, Stardust Excel Dragon. Yeah, it goes with that to get to your power to a Braver Dragon, whereas Psy Reflector can just get you to Braver Dragon by itself. So, but that's basically the idea there. Whereas this is a more controlled, grindy take on the deck. It's kind of similar to what Japan does with this deck, but with Pillar and Nadir. Although I'm not confident on the Nadir package's ability, playability post Nightmare, and I'll talk about that when I actually get to it. So that's that. And then one last thing is that just remember that if you play this deck, you'll probably get some amount of annoyance from your opponent, because Master Duel and this deck's play on that has made a lot of people come to utterly hate this deck. Like when I first picked up this deck, people didn't give a whole lot of shits about it, but now though, you mention you like Mikanko, your opponent's probably going to want to kill you. So bear that in mind. I'm of the opinion that this is a gatekeeper deck, in that if your deck cannot handle Mikanko in this format or next format, then you're just as screwed, if not more so, against the top decks, because they're just simply much more powerful than this. And true, Hu Li is Hu Li, and she can solo certain matchups. Fire King, Labyrinth, and such forth can just blow you out just as badly, if not worse. So with that being said, we'll go into the actual deck profile. So for the Mikanko engine, 3 copies of Uhime, 2 copies of Hu Li, 2 copies of Hare, and no copies of Nini. So, the idea behind this ratio is, this is inspired by a list that just recently topped the regionals, and the guy on his profile said that he didn't play Nini so that he would not play into talents, and he is 100% correct in that regard. One of the ways that your opponent can mess with your board is by going for talents and taking, because that doesn't target, or hand ripping you, or just drawing more cards to try and crack the board. By not using Nini's steal effect, you don't play into talents or thrust. Likewise, if you equip something to Huli and you don't trigger her search effect, you also don't play into talents or thrust. So bear that in mind. And Huli does, not Huli, Nini does almost nothing going second anyway, and you have to be prepared to go second even if you are specializing in a go first build. So I haven't played Nini in months, and I honestly haven't really missed her. She is cute for things where if you're in a Kashtira matchup and they summon Fenrir, you can take the Fenrir, and then later on when they try and summon Scareclaw Kashtira, because that's one of their 2 outs to Huli, you then banish it with Fenrir. But anyway, that is the Mikanko monsters. As far as the supplementary monster engine goes, 3 copies of Ashoka Pillar. I made an entire video on this card and what it does for the deck, so I won't go too in depth on it. Just note that on summon, it searches your equips, which is very, very good because you've got some powerful equips: Water Arabesque, Snatch Steal, Angelic Ring. Not really though, you'll want that in the deck, but it's a starter, it's an extender. It gives you the ability to do grind a little too, because you can just grab Fire Dances. Good card, and you sometimes will make rank 3s with it. Then for the Mikanko spell lineup, 2 copies of Ceremony, 3 copies of Arabesque, 2 copies of Fire Dance, 1 Mayawashidori. Then for the rivalry targets, we've got our in-theme Snatch Steal, actual Snatch Steal, and Angelica's Angelic Ring. Not much to say a whole lot here, because this build is focused on a slower, grindier game. The second Fire Dance will more than likely come up, as you can summon Hare, get another Fire Dance, summon Huli back, and just keep doing things. People tend to forget that when this deck is not trying to be an OTK deck, it's also a fairly good control mid-range deck that can play pretty well into the long game, especially off of Mayawashidori. So between Mayawashidori and Fire Dance, you should always be able to keep one of your Mikos on the board. And the other card to talk about is Angelica's Angelic Ring, which is pretty much my go-to for rivalry if I'm not using any of the steel cards. It's replaced Axe of Fools in that regard. I didn't want to have too many of those type of cards, though I will admit Axe of Fools does have the merit of you can play it immediately, whereas this has to be equipped to a monster that already has an equip. But that is up to personal preference. Axe of Fools is a monster negate. This is a spell negate, and how it works is the first time your opponent activates a spell card while you control this card or a spell effect, it gets negated. It also has the effect where you can destroy it to gain 500 life, and then the monster that this was equipped to becomes untargetable while it remains on the board. Why would you do this? Because you can actually get multiple uses of this effect. If you equip Angelic's Ring to your monster in response to your opponent's spell card, and it somehow falls off, either the monster is removed or something like that, you use IP Mask Arena to link off the monster to equip to blah blah blah, and then Ohimi re-equips this to an equipped monster, you get another use of it, because it's not a once per turn as far as the negate effect goes, and that allows you to do some neat stuff. But yeah, the reason why I'm playing this over Axe of Fools is that there's a lot of power spells in the game, and having an engine means to stop things like Prosperity and sided blowout cards like Lightning Storm and what am I thinking of? Forbidden Droplet is nice. This thing actually can stop super polymerization if it's if they lead off with it. You obviously can't chain to the super poly, but if this is already in play and they activate super poly, you actually negate the super poly, which is funny because it's an effect you're not activating in response. So The fact that you can beat Forbidden Droplet with this card, though, is very, very nice, because Droplet is able to bypass all of your effects, and it's one of the ways your opponent can crack your board. Then for the Mikanko traps, 1 copy of Spirit Walk and 1 copy of Rivalry. Already gone over this card. Spirit Walk's a card that came from Dune. It allows you to equip one of your opponent's monsters to a Mikanko monster you control. Then if you control a ritual monster, you also deal them 500 damage for every face-up equip spell that you currently control. So the equipped monster, and likely an equipped spell you already have on Huli, that's 1000 damage. You can also banish it to special summon one of your banished Mikankos or one from the hand, which is good for getting back things that get banished off of Maiowashidori. And then that's it for the actual Mikanko engine. And now, I know at least one person is going to ask, where's the new ritual monster from Dune? Why aren't you playing it? And the simple answer is, that card is, well, it's terrible. Like, that card is cheats. Arahime is an awful upgrade to the archetype, and you never ever want to play the card, as it doesn't do anything. Its hand or grave effect is awful, because you need to already have cards in your graveyard to actually do stuff. So it's actually worse as an emergency equip than Infernal Knight Roland. What else? The level makes it a bit awkward to hard ritual summon with Kagura, and I am playing Kagura in here as a going first build of the deck. Actually will play it. Actually, where the frig is my Kagura? Oh, here it is. Yeah, I am playing Kagura. A level 9 is a lot harder to ritual summon than a level 6. Furthermore, she doesn't do anything on the board other than reflect damage, which is basically the same as Ohime, so I almost never want to summon her with Ceremony, and I never want to search Arahime either. Like, anytime I could search Arahime, I could search literally anything else, and it'd be better. Either with Ohime's effect, either with Herald of the Arc Light's effect, or even with Ceremony's effect. It is a terrible card. Don't play it. It's noob bait, and anyone who tells you you're wrong for not playing it, you can tell them they're wrong, because every single Mikanko deck that has ever topped anything doesn't play Arahime. I'm not talking about locals either. I'm talking about regionals, YCSs. No one plays that trash card. Nice art, nice QCR. That's all it's got going for it. Don't fall for it. That little rant aside, let's move on to other stuff. So, as I alluded to, there is the Nadir engine with Maximus, which right now is pretty cool. It allows you to get to Ohime or Kagura if you don't have them already, which is why I'm not playing Preparation of Rites. Furthermore, resolving Maximus gets you some extra draws. You'll be first sending Garura to search the Maximus, that's a draw, then you'll be sending Fergie as part of the Maximus, which is another draw. Useful because you are playing non-engine. My issue with these cards, though, especially post Phantom Nightmare, though, is the fact that we are expected to see an increase in play of super polymerization, which means people are going to be running cards such as Garura in their own extra decks. So now, when you're trying to use Maximus on your opponent, they'll send their own Garura, draw into a card, and God help you if that card they drew was Droll Lockbird. It's why Voiceless Voice stopped playing this card entirely in the OCG, because it kept backfiring on them. And that's why I don't really want to be playing this card going forward. I just would rather play Preparation of Rites and Pot of Prosperity. I think those will be better going forward. It is nice that you can set up good with this, but no, I like it right now, but I think it's going to get cut, and I'll just play other cards in its place. But if you want to go with this, by all means. I will say, though, that if you play without this engine, this means you can justify playing like things that blow out decks like Dimension Shifter, because you could, in theory, main deck Dimension Shifter to blow Fire King out and not get punished for it because you're not turning off your Nadirs. Moving on to non-engine, so I've got roughly 12. So 3 Ash, 3 Kashkira, 3 Nib, 3 Imperm, and a Call-By because, yeah. So the thing about the non-engine is that non-engine is up to your discretion. It depends on what your area has, what you know your opponents have, and whatnot. My local has basically everything. Meta, rogue, jank, casual, and also people who just magically draw and Lockbird all the damn time. So I'm just playing a non-engine lineup that goes fairly wide. The Defenders could be swapped out for Super Polys, much like the regional list. I've got Ash in here because we have people on Branded, and we all know what Ash Blossom does to Branded. The beer is good against the Sword Soul people here because Sword Soul players, you got either the ones that get greedy or the ones that don't. Plus, we just have people who play Nib regardless. And Imperm is a hand trap that can stop stuff and can't be stopped by Call-By. And Call-By is Call-By. Since I'm going first, this card is good for stopping annoying ass hand traps like Ash Blossom and, more importantly, Draw and Lockbird. But also, you can use it in a pinch to negate Fire King shit, or in the upcoming Princess and what have you. But like I said, the non-engine though, you can do whatever with it, and you can honestly count the Nadir and Maximus package too. So like, here's the amount of non-engine you can fit in. It's not as much as say Voiceless Voice or Centurion, but you can play this deck that way. Then on to the extra deck. One Owl Mirage for the plays where you have to normal Mikanko and then equip Mayo onto it and then link it off to make this. This is supposed to be a secure Gardna, but I cannot find mine for whatever reason. So pretend that's not. You're just going into this just so you can turn on Maximus if you just draw it and nothing else, like I seem to like to do a whole lot. And I know it's a really weird superpower, but I have it. Then, speaking of Maximus, we've got the Nadir package target. So Garura to send off of Nadir, Heralds to send off of Maximus, and Furgit to also send off of Maximus. Then just generic extra deck good stuff. 2 Charmers, Dark and Hida. Dark will be good for a couple matchups, and Hida will be fantastic given that we're in a format with fire everywhere. And then because we're playing those, we got IP Masquerina, and because I'm playing Masquerina, SP Little Knight. I will say that I lucked out and was able to get a hold of 2 Little Knights. One by buying it when it was relatively cheap, well, the cheapest it was, and then I pulled a second Little Knight from some random pack. So if you ever see me with 2 of these in my profile, don't be alarmed, but realistically speaking, you don't have to have Little Knight in here. You can play Nightmare Unicorn. It's just, you know how good this card is, and yeah, it's great. After playing with it, I was like, yeah, I can see why people even run 2 of it, and I probably will when I get the Voiceless Voice, or even just the non-hand trap, the more hand trap heavy pure version of this deck that doesn't play Dogmatika. And then finally, I've got my Xyz lineup, so got the stuff that allows me to make a big Zeus, and then finally, Typhon. Well, it's one thing that you can't, if you can't get Little Knight or the Synthos Wells, I do urge you guys who are playing this deck to pick this card up, because there are just some matchups where he is tremendously powerful. Dragon Link, Manadium, where you can just keep their big monsters in place, and you can just ram your small monsters into it and eventually win. So that's that, and I will just go into final thoughts. So that is the deck in a nutshell. All in all, going first with this deck is, in my opinion, the way to go. It's just how you want to go first remains to be seen. It loses a little bit of its luster going into Phantom Nightmare format, because it's, you know, what you want to be doing with this deck is kind of outshined by other mid-range control decks, especially by Voiceless Voice, because its playstyle is very reminiscent of a grindy, control-oriented Mikanko deck. And while it's even got its own version of Huli protection, it's not as widespread as Huli, but you're also summoning a 4100 attack Omni Negate, and you just have more consistency because you get to play Pre-Prepper Brights alongside Diviner. and the actual engine of that deck is smaller, so you can play even more non-engines. I think your main deck voice monster count and minimum is around 14 cards, whereas Mikanko engine is around 19 to 20 because of the equips. But I would not count this deck out entirely. I would always expect to see it at an event, and if you're building a deck and you go, huh, you know, if I go up against Mikanko, I probably just lose to Huli, then consider having some kind of answer to it in your extra or side, what have you. Purely is also still around, so I would expect that if you're siding outs to answer Noir, then you can also use those outs on this. And what else is there to really say? This is a deck that I'll probably come back to a couple times, because much like Dragon Link, there's just times where it's just a good call. And it also benefits from just like other random stuff to come along, because Mikanko can slide into other ritual engines. We saw this with Libromancer. And it also benefits from, one, random Fire Warrior support because of Hare. There's a Infernoble hybrid of this deck. I'm not a big fan of it, but I can understand what you're doing, because Durandal can get to Hare, and then you can also do stuff with Renaud and Oliver and what have you. And also, whenever just random equip support comes along, if they ever print just good equip spells, this deck benefits from it. So that's always something to keep in the back of your mind. Angelic Ring, I didn't think much of it at first, but after mucking around with it, it's actually really good in here. And as a heads up, it's coming to Master Duel pretty soon, so soon Mikanko players on Master Duel get the ability to stop Harpy's Feather Duster that your opponent just sack draws going first. And that's all I gotta say about that, so hope you guys enjoyed this. Until next time, this is Bluestar899, jacking out.